right, let's begin with our first big story. Southeast and South-South lawmakers want the federal government to review the ownership structure of oil wells in the country to allow for 65% ownership by the people of the region.
The lawmakers noted that the region's development is being hindered by the present payment mode of derivative oil funds. They urged the youth to shun confrontation, violence and militancy in pressing for the redress of the zone.
Now, the joint session of legislators from the Southeast and South-South geopolitical zones not only condemned the evil acts of kidnapping, hostage-taking and bursting of oil pipelines, but stressed that militants from the zones should be constituted into an officially recognized brigade for the protection of oil installations. All right, joining us in the studio is the Assistant Secretary of the John National Congress, Lagos Chapter, Agbere, A.B. Johnson.
A.B.
Johnson.
A.B. Benson.
A.B. Benson, rather, sorry. It's good to have you in the studio this morning.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Now, the issue of the Niger Delta has been on the front burner for decades. Even before Ken Saro-Wiwa, he has always been there, but he was one of those who brought things to the limelight of the world, drawing attention and all of that. Now, where we stand right now, there's so much dissatisfaction from people in the South-South, the youth, the elders, and so on. But they seem to be not the same kind of understanding that the South-Southerners have, that other Nigerians have, maybe because they don't have a first-hand knowledge of what is on ground. But can you give us a picture of what the nature of devastation or the nature of what gives rise to these agitations in the South-South? Let us have that basic understanding first before we know what the cause are and all of that.
Let me just start from this angle. Actually, it's not Ken Saro-Wiwa that started it. We have the likes of late Major Isaac Adaka Boro. He agitated for it too, and he was taken to prison. And he fought for Nigeria to be won. It is the same problem that is still on today. If you look at what is going on in the country, you will find that the people have been marginalized fully. Because when it comes to oil, it's everybody's own. But when it comes to other minerals, the other part of the country, they enjoy it. So the agitation must continue. It must continue. Because one, they must recognize that our people have suffered for this country. Because the oil companies that we're even looking at, because if you look at the derivation itself, the derivation of 3% is being paid by the oil companies. But the federal government is not paying its own part, which is 10%. And we are all aware that Obasanjo did not sign that derivation until he left government, because he knows that these people are really fighting the just cause. But he felt the only way to punish the people is not to sign it. But the law is taking this cause. For a period of time, if it's not signed, it becomes a law. And that's why they're enjoying it. This agitation, you think, the people are saying, give us education, give us infrastructure, help develop us health-wise, give us all that it takes of a region that is feeding a whole country. That is all we are fighting for. We are not only just saying it for the sake of, say we have been, because some of us are looking at it from the perspective that we have been personal. No, go to the area. I just came back from the creeks. If you see our people, you pity them. You pity them. You begin to ask, are this actually the oil-rich Niger Delta you are talking about? No.
Well, indeed, I mean, the rest of Nigerians do appreciate the fact that the Niger Delta has been at the receiving end of the fallout of oil exploration, especially when it comes to environmental, impact and all of that. Yeah. But the agitations have taken a new turn that doesn't seem to pay the people of the Niger Delta or anybody, any good. It doesn't blow anyone any good. What's your take on the way the Niger Delta Avengers, for example, have been going on, about the agitation? I mean, even the former ex-militants have been condemning,
exactly.
The violence and all of that. But let's even come to the real issue here, which is the 65%, you know, that the South and Southeast lawmakers are asking for. It's almost laughable as far as some people are concerned. They are saying that it's totally unrealistic to be asking for 65% when, based on historical facts, the other demands that are not even as big as this really haven't been met.
65, yeah.
Where do you think government should start with meeting the demands of the Niger Delta in such a way that those violent agitations, you know, will be put behind us?
Yep. You see, the actual fact is that the government will call for a very good team from the government angle, then also get across to the Niger Delta leaders. For example, on a political platform now, the governor of Benson State is the most senior ranking officer when it comes to the political level in the country, because he's the governor. Because if you look at other Ijos, I'm talking of Ijos, you find that he is in position to liaise with government and work along with the Ijaw National Congress, which we are all clamoring for. We've been saying, carry the Ijaw National Congress along. We know our leaders that will represent us at that dialogue. Call the youths to order. Put positions to them. If the government is a good listener, they will go back to the basis. Look at why these people are still saying the same thing till date. We have not changed from positions. It has not changed.
It's
Even
almost,
the 65%
it's almost a no-brainer to talk about, you know, the different interventions that government has, you know, brought into the Niger Delta, the NDDC. Of course, you have the Ogoni cleanup that's only recent, and all of that.
There's also the Ministry
of the Niger Delta, you know, affairs and all of that. Okay, but at this point, let's bring in our other guest from Port Harcourt. We're joined now by a social development practitioner, Borve Pago Imabel. Very interesting name. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast this morning. And your background is very interesting too. Yes. Okay, weigh in on this. The latest developments, the South and Southeast lawmakers are asking for 65% of the oil blocks in the Niger Delta. What's your view on this?
Thank you so much. I think this is long overdue in terms of the request coming from these senators representing the South and Southeast. I say this because we have had various skirmishes in the regions which have engineered agitations towards the representatives and other members of the Senate in terms of people questioning what their representation is at the National Assembly. The fact remains that our people feel so marginalized, so much so that if you take from 1999 till date, which is about 17 years of continued democracy in Nigeria, and these people are just coming at this point to ask for this 65%, it is mind-boggling. We believe that this is what they should have put on the front burner right from day one, given that they are from communities that are devastated, that have faced so much of devastation in terms of both land and water, and they know that the livelihood sources of their people have been completely eroded. So we are saying that they shouldn't just press for 65. In fact, we should be pressing for 80%. And then we can, at that point, negotiate with whoever is coming, the federal government, to showing them that we have the resources. And it is not being done like this in other climes. We are not paid royalties. Every royalty is paid to the federal government, and the federal government decides what goes where. They have set up a fiscal mobilization committee or commission that takes over the distribution of the oil wealth in terms of allocation to the states and local governments in the country. Meanwhile, this is coming from a particular region. The 9 Niger Delta states, we have about 27 senators who are in Senate, and quite a number of representatives in the House of Representatives. So we are asking that they should center this discussion around the benefit that comes back not just to the states, but to the oil-producing communities, that is the host communities, and they should ensure that this is reflected in the petroleum industry bill, which they are still trying to discuss at the National Assembly. By so doing, they will have addressed key needs of stakeholders and also address the social contestations or protests which have visited the Niger Delta and also the southeastern part of the country in very recent times. I do believe that these senators have found good point to stand on to discuss the needs of the people, and they are talking the minds of stakeholders in the southeastern states and also the south states. So it's a welcome development.
All right, Borve, let me come to you on this. If we're talking about the ownership of oil blocks and oil wells generally, we know that this is a venture that not just communities can go into it. These are businesses owned by institutions or very, very powerful people, if you have to put it that way. Now, if we're talking about the ownership, how does that address the issues in the communities? How does that ensure that the roads are made, there are schools for everybody, there's healthcare, there are hospitals for everybody? How does that translate? Because ownership is just about a few persons or a few institutions owning the oil wells. How does that translate to the benefit of the people?
Thank you very much. The challenge with ownership of oil wells in Nigeria is actually as a failure of state institutions in Nigeria. And I'm addressing the presidency, and I'm also addressing the National Assembly. Why? If the institutions have put forth a framework that guides the ownership of oil well, that guides acquisition, that also guides operation, that guides how the people, communities are affected by those who own these oil wells, these challenges will not arise. For instance, in all of my research, I could not find a particular criteria for ownership of oil well. The NNPC do not have a set criteria. They have just put it out there like a business concern. But the federal government over time, through the presidency, allocates with a discretionary measure what goes out to who. And so we do not understand how this allocation is drawn out. Neither do people participate. And so when the process is as fluid as it is, you don't expect that it is going to bring much value in terms of infrastructural development to the communities, that is the oil-bearing communities in the South or whatever. Senator Ita Inang in 2013 agitated when he said that over 83% of oil blocks in the country are owned by non-Southerners. That is the communities from where this oil is gotten. And they asserted how this is done. Nobody after that went forward to develop a framework that addressed the questions that Senator Ita Inang raised at that point. And this is actually a cause for further concern. If at the National Assembly such issues are presented and not addressed conclusively, then it is a bane or a pivot on which further social contestations in the Niger Delta is also being driven. The Niger Delta Avengers are saying that they are doing what they are doing because issues are not addressed. Now, if Senate came up or the National Assembly came up and addressed the issues that Ita Inang raised conclusively, this could have been a point for engagement with communities. There are oil blocks that are said to be non-functioning. And I want to quote one Austin Olurusho, the then director of DPRO. He said that why most oil blocks are not given to indigents is that they do not have the wherewithal. That is in terms of capital. But even if you give it to a northerner, it is not coming back to us. And so what I'm saying is the agitation of the people should be addressed as one key factor. Allocation of oil block should have a framework that is guiding it, with NNPC playing the key role. And then resources that are gotten from oil block owners should be processed in a structure that brings back benefit to every stakeholder, this can only be done by institutions at the federal level. And that is why the National Assembly and the presidency has very key roles to play if they want this not to be further causing social discontent in the regions that they are governing.
All right,
it is only on
very interesting points. Borve, just hold on there, gentlemen. Just hold on. Mike is going to take the wall.
Let me take everyone to my wall,
Absolutely.
and then let's have a perspective to understanding what this is about, so we can help our discussion in here. Now, the most productive region, if I have to put it, the most productive region of the nation is the coastal Niger Delta Basin in the south when it comes to what has been giving us oil all the while and the wealth of Nigeria. Now, cumulatively, Nigeria has more than 150 oil fields and about 1,000 oil wells. And if you translate that into how much billions of dollars that has brought to the country over the years, it's really great. And as at 1990, these small fields accounted for about 62% of Nigeria's oil production. Now, if we move on to have other understanding, now the bulk of these oil wells are owned and controlled by non-indigenous of the South region, with those from the Niger Delta having little or just 10% of the natural resources as far as the agitations they are concerned. And yet they are the ones faced with the consequences of oil exploration, especially environmental degradation. Now, if we move further, now at the moment, the Niger Delta, the communities there get about 10% fund for community or host community development, and about 13% derivation of oil funds there from the region as allocation for oil producing states from the Federation account. And that forms the basis for some of the wealth going back into the Niger Delta, but certainly they said that is not enough. Now, South and Southeast lawmakers now want the federal government to review the ownership of oil wells to favor Niger Delta communities. These are some of their demands lately, and that's part of what we are talking about today, and certainly will bring perspective to that. Now, they want the region, this demand is that they want the region to have, the Niger Delta region to have about 65% of ownership to cushion the effect of persistent poverty, environmental degradation, insecurity in the region. Then the remaining 25% can be owned by international MNC, multinational corporations, or even other parts of institutions and individuals from other parts of Nigeria generally. That's the demand, and certainly we'll be talking about this as we get along. Now, the legislators blame the ills plaguing the Niger Delta on the disproportionate return locals get from the utilization of its natural resources, and insisted that the federal government remove those ills by leaving a bigger piece of the oil revenue pie in the Delta and doing more to stamp out the violence there. Now, if we move on, an interesting suggestion put forward by the lawmakers was to assign militant groups in the Niger Delta with the task of protecting the oil production and transport infrastructure in order to prevent the rise of new militant groups. And yeah, that's a picture of some of the militants in the Niger Delta. That's how they look on a daily basis from the pictures we get from them in the creeks and all of that. Now, if we move on now, at the heart of discontent among the oil-producing communities is an acute sense that the wealth derived from their land is siphoned off by the federal government and never returned. The seemingly dry debates on revenue allocation formula are central to the cycle of protest and repression. Now, if you look at this picture, this is just one little piece of how the parts of the Niger Delta look like.
You know, Mike, if I could come in here, if pictures could speak louder than words, this picture that you have on the wall right now speaks so loud, and it is amazing. Not to, you know, add pain to the injury. But maybe there's a need for government to really look at this again. Yeah, beyond you know, the tokens and all of that.
Over the years, this is the kind of picture. This is the kind of picture you get from from parts of the
because
Niger
you see
Delta.
devastation on one side and you see devastation moving.
Now, if you
cut
the picture from this side, you see this and you see this. Now, you will say this is green.
Yes.
But in true terms, this green is not natural. Because the point there is, all this permeates through the soil and it doesn't give nutrients to this. So even if you're eating this, if you plant your vegetable or your farm here, it's not going to produce well. That's the impact of this. Now, I've been to the Niger Delta, parts of River State and parts of Bayelsa State, and even Akwa Ibom State, where you have some of this degradation and this oil spills over the years. Now, the UNEP report has talked about cleaning the environment in Ogoniland and all of that, and the federal government has voiced intention to do that. So we look forward to that cleanup. I guess Benson is going to agree with that, but we're following on that on how the cleaning process and repatriation will take place as far as the UNEP report is concerned.
Yeah, we are looking forward to that. But meanwhile, let me just make one or two comments on that. You see, the cleanup, if United Nations are not coming, will the federal government do it? No.
Well, the federal government did set the ball rolling on the investigations to determine the extent of damage to that environment.
Yes. If you go there now, nothing is on ground. Nothing is on ground.
I don't understand you. When you say nothing is on ground, as in, you know,
in respect of the cleanup.
From this cleanup.
Yes, even with the vice president was there to do the launch. But today, nothing. You can even come back on the villagers.
Yeah, but we heard there's supposed to be a framework, and there's supposed to be a structure to understanding how involved, because they talked about the community being involved in the cleaning process, the institutions being involved in the cleaning process. All of those things have to be, the framework has to be designed, because the UNEP came up with how the cleaning process is going to be carried out and how much is involved and all of that. Now, so I guess it's going to take some time for all of this framework
you know what, Mike, let's just remind our viewers that you know, it's time, of course, to leave our viewers on TVC Entertainment, but of course you have the opportunity to continue to watch the show on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190, DSTV 418, GoTV 45, and of course ACTV 510. The show continues in a jiffy.
All right, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are discussing the Niger Delta this morning. We're talking about the call by lawmakers from the south, south, and southeast geopolitical zones in Nigeria for the ownership of oil wells in Nigeria, and from the Niger Delta, they want about 65% ownership to come from the Niger Delta, and then about 25% to be shared by other institutions from other parts of the country and even parts of the world if they have to. And we've been talking about this before we went on a short break. And we are back now, and I was giving you a background to the oil spills in the Niger Delta, and certainly it's one of the cause for agitation. Guest after guest, analysts, and even professionals have given us a background as to this cleanup, and the agitations are coming from high levels of deprivations in the Niger Delta. Now, let me come to let me take us to Borve in Port Harcourt, in our Port Harcourt studio. Borve, let me bring you in here.
I think Agbere was trying to actually make a point. Maybe we should allow him before we allow. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, you know, before you go to launch, every other requirements for that cleanup will have started. You will have gotten all your papers on ground, getting everything ready, so that as soon as you start, you do the commission, the launch, you immediately go on immediately. You start work immediately. But as I'm speaking with you, at this moment, there is no contractor on ground. No contractor on ground. It's just, to me, it's more or less like a kangaroo, just trying to blindfold the people. Let the federal government do something about it. Not to be telling people stories that is not on ground.
Well, that's truly troubling, but I wish we had somebody on the side of government to actually give us the true position, of what is going on, especially with the Ogoni cleanup.
Yeah. Even apart from that, we certainly will send people to find out, because as reporters will go down there to the communities to find out. Okay, the chiefs and all the stakeholders, they are asking them, what has the government done? What has the development been when it comes to the promise by government, the intention by government to start developing or start working on the UNEP report as far as that is concerned. Let me bring in Borve here from Port Harcourt studio. Now, Borve, the issue of ownership has been the bane all the while, but if we talk about agitation, we know that the government has been given 13% derivation to the oil-producing states as far as how much of oil they produce per each state. And we had the NDDC, and we also have the Niger Delta Ministry. We haven't had any agitation directed at these people, and even the state governors generally, as to what they are supposed to do to develop the Niger Delta on their own before the federal government complements whatever they're supposed to do and all of that. We don't see all this agitation directed at these people, and even the representatives, for the lawmakers, the senators who are making these calls right now. So how justifiable is that when charity is not beginning at home?
Well, thank you. The issue is that issues about oil and gas are in the exclusive list. And there is so much of awareness in communities right now about who does what, in the industry and nationally too. So this has affected the psyche of community persons in terms of venting their anger. Though the governors or the governments over the periods that we are discussing have not showed so much of concern, in the terms of utilization of the 13% derivation, I will still blame it on the federal government. Why? If you give somebody money, if you give somebody an assignment, also ensure that you monitor. That is completely lost. I will not just dole out a 13% fund to any state without you setting out or itemizing your areas of focus in terms of utilization, without you telling me how much value this is going to create in oil-bearing communities. That money, as it were, is not meant for just any project. It is meant primarily to addressing the needs of oil-bearing communities, to assuaging their feelings, and also to build confidence, not just in the state government, but particularly in the federal government, from where these monies are disbursed to the states. Now, let me tell us something, which is a data from NNPC. They said that currently there are 388 oil blocks in Nigeria. Out of the 388, 173 are actively allocated. Out of the 173 allocated, 80 is to Nigerians, and the rest were allocated to foreigners. This is completely so disheartening, especially when you view it that the people of the South or Southeast have less than 5% of the 80 oil blocks which are active and which have been allocated to Nigerians. What we are agitating for is that the goose that lays the golden egg should also bear a golden life, should live a golden life. We do have hospitals that are not functioning. We have acidic rainfall. You were talking about vegetation in the creeks, in the Niger Delta. I am from Borve, from where the what do you call it, the UNEP report flag of ceremony held, and from where most of the devastation continued. I'm Ogoni by extraction. I am disheartened that since June 2nd, 2016, nothing, not even a tractor, not even the presence of officials of the Ministry of Environment have been seen in those sites anymore. The vegetation you see is completely polluted and are being extinct. What I'm saying is that aquatic life is going beyond just what you see. The fish that is there, if consumed, have the potency of creating several health challenges. What are we talking about? We are talking about
let me come to our guest in the studio, Agbere, Benson. Let me ask you the same question that Mike, asked Borve Pago there in Port Harcourt. The fact that, you're asking for 65% ownership of this oil blocks. What exactly are the guarantees that if indeed the government, accedes or concedes to this request, that you'll actually have this development, that we're talking about in the Niger Delta? The Southeast and South-South lawmakers are saying that, because of the present position of things where the oil blocks belong majorly to outsiders, it has set the Niger Delta backwards.
Yes.
But what are the guarantees that if it's in the hands of Niger Delta themselves, you will not have the same problem?
I don't think we will not be having a problem, because the community is involved, and you are part of the community. Since you are part of the community, you definitely know that you need to develop the area. For example,
see, I asked that question because government over the years, has had to engage with leaders in the Niger Delta, has come up with intervention programs, different ones that we have named over and over again on this show. Yet it has not reached the people. And you say government should, give funds to the communities directly and all of that. But not much really has come of the little that has been given to these leaders of the Niger Delta.
You see, let us look at it from, in as much as we want to be part of, to hold this, the oil wells or oil block. I expected government to know that instead of giving out money, you should give contractors, you swap with oil. For infrastructure development, we have international contractors that can help to develop the area. Because the fear is that we are all Nigerians. If money comes to you, we keep saying that we don't trust ourselves when it comes to money. Since it is so, why don't you swap? So that development will come to the area, because you are now using NDDC,
Niger
Delta Ministry, with 13% derivation, as a weapon to say, look, I'm giving you money. Go and develop your area. No. How much is the money? If you go to the National Assembly, if you look at NDDC budget, it has been slashed heavily. Slashed heavily.
Yeah, but if there are slashes like that, we expect the representatives, the House of Rep members and the senators from the South to agitate.
Good. You see, the National Assembly, the majority has the vote. Even if you shout tomorrow, you can only make your noise.
Yeah, but on the other hand too, if there are slashes, there's been slashes to allocations to federal government, to all states in the federation. So from that perspective, is it not understandable?
No. See, let me just come in this way. You see, when I present a budget of 200 billion, I showed you what I'm going to use it for. Is there? You can even call. You have the Senate committee and the House of Reps committee on the Niger Delta. They will also come in to do their outside oversight functions. They know that these people are asking for too much. That is why you see the delay, and that is why you see the cut in the budget. Because most people believe, oh, Niger Deltans are shouting too much, and you people are enjoying their right, and you are saying they are shouting too much. We are in a political setting in which we don't have a space.
Okay, just before we go, let me just get one question across to Borve Pago Imabel. If we say that Nigeria is one nation, one country, united country, represented, of course, by the Niger Delta and all the other, components that make up Nigeria. If the Niger Delta does get 65%, what do you envisage for the future? Don't you see a situation where the rest of the country would actually be crying marginalization, where the Niger Delta will only concentrate on its own part of the country, at the cost of the rest of the country, and then we have another problem on our hands?
And that is why Nigeria as a state has failed in planning. We are not futuristic. If we were futuristic, this agitation for 65% wouldn't be coming at this point in time, when especially we have had time, interface, and processes which we have jettisoned. For instance, the creation of the Niger Delta Commission and the Ministry of Niger Delta only came as a response to agitations of decades, which started maybe with Isaac Adakaboro and the likes of Ken Saro-Wiwa. Now, if the Niger Delta is given 65%, and to me this is a figure for negotiation, it is a figure for negotiation because you don't expect that possibly you ask for 100% and you are giving 100%. So, if we are given this, I have said it before, it will assuage the feelings of the Niger Delta. It will add up to the 13% derivation. It will add up to the benefits of NDDC, even if, and I emphasize this, even if the NDDC has been turned into an institution for political gratification. I mean that politicians send their associates there to compensate them for political works which they have done for them, possibly by way of elections and all of that. So, we are asking, give us 65%. Let the federal government tell us what they can give. And for other regions of the country, also begin to plan. 65% can be downgraded to maybe 50 or 45. But you will now ensure that the rest components of the Nigerian state, as it were, also have what they can go home with. This will further assuage their feelings. And in terms of production of other minerals in the country, maybe solid minerals and all of that, you will also factor this into whatever plans the federal government has, maybe at ministerial level or at the level of the presidency. But let me say very categorically that the efforts of these representatives at the National Assembly have not been met with accolades from their constituencies. Why? We are saying that it is too late to ask for this. Because they are...
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Agbere Benson, Assistant Secretary General of Ijaw National Congress, Lagos, and Borve Pago Imabel. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.